Thank you, His Excellency, Honorable Mr. Abhisit. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving another round of big hand to Mr. Abhisit. We have about 15 minutes for this session, for the Q&A sessions. And I believe you have a lot of questions to raise, to ask His Excellency. And I do not wish to summarize what His Excellency have said. So I'll open up. So we'll take 3 questions at a time. Then begin with another round for the 3 questions. Yes, please.
My name is Fuad from Islamic Renaissance Front, progressive Muslim think tank based in Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah.
Firstly, I just want to thank you for your very eye-opening speech. I learned a lot from it. The ASEAN Coalition for Clean Governance, I know it's still inaugural, it's still new, but I cannot help seeing the regional emphasis that this coalition is aiming for. My question is, what would be the common values that would be the unifying factor for all of those interested in the idea of clean governments to rally around, right? So if we look at EU as one model of regionalism, we can see right now that it is pretty much tearing apart at the seams, right? Project of a common currency is being questioned every day. The interests of nation states trump over any notion of regionalism or shared Judeo-Christian heritage, so on and so forth. So what is that common value, especially in this post-Cold War world, especially keeping in mind ASEAN's Cold War roots? So I'd like some clarification on that. Thank you.
We take 2 more questions before His Excellency can respond. Yes, Excellency. Mr. Shilman.
Yeah, thank you. My question referred to the development gap in ASEAN, because you see, as you see that ASEAN comprising 10 member countries, and the latest new member of ASEAN, CMNV, Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam. I think they have a gap, a different gap with the old ASEAN member countries. So how can bring the issue of the corruption on clean government as a regional agenda? Because I just recall what we had when you were as a prime minister. Even when we invite CSU becoming dialogue with the leaders at that time, it's very difficult to convince the new member countries. So how to convince the CRMP countries that the corruption on the clean government agenda is important for the regional grouping? Thank you.
Your Excellency, my name is Sim. When you were Prime Minister in Thailand, and regionally, right now, there's a contest to become populist, okay? There are a lot of political parties racing towards itself to be populist party, or populism is thriving in this part of the world. As a Prime Minister, and you are going against a very popular populist party, okay, in your country, what is your dilemma? How do you reconcile? Because there are obviously it's some sort like a political bribery, okay? When you have elections and things are going in this region. So what's your political dilemma? And also, can you tell us a little bit of your how do you fight political corruption? Some of your successes, okay? Thank you very much.
I'll take the first two questions which have a regional dimension very much to them. First of all, the gap. I think ASEAN fully recognizes that the explicitly stated objective of integration must include the reduction of this development gap, that there must be greater equity within the region as well. So no, we're not just talking about free trade and investment and growth, but also more equity within the region. How is that going to be achieved? I think the number one item on the agenda now would have to be connectivity. Somehow the CRMV countries and with Thailand, and Malaysia, and then up north towards China, we need the connectivity to take place. Physical connectivity, that means infrastructure investment, highway networks, energy grid, rail links, telecommunications perhaps, and so on. Connectivity as far as what I call software is concerned, in the sense of harmonization of regulations and so on, and also people-to-people connectivity. Now, we should turn this into an opportunity. What's going to happen is these investments in infrastructure will require enormous financial resources. They're going to have to come from, say, development banks, come from investors from inside and outside the region. But such huge investments must make demands about the standards of procurement, of contracts, and the way these projects are implemented. That way, I think we integrate these countries into the kind of standards that we hope that they would achieve as they join the community. Likewise, the software connectivity will mean that all the regulations in whichever country that is lagging behind will have to be steadily brought up to the same kind of standard that will allow for real connectivity and therefore exchange and therefore trade and investment among the countries in ASEAN. The people-to-people connectivity, I think, will answer the first question about how we attain some kind of common value, some kind of unifying factor. We have to recognize this. I think we have to begin with common objectives. And you know, for so long, ASEAN was criticized by other regions for lacking the kind of ambitions that they had for integration program and regionalism. When I was the chair of ASEAN, European journalists used to ask me why we were lacking in ambition and not aiming for a common currency. I think now they have the answers. And ASEAN's approach has always been a pragmatic and a gradual one, with clearly stated objectives. You know, the first 30, 40 years, it wasn't about the economics. It was about achieving peace, making sure that we can coexist peacefully within the region. Now we are shifting the focus to economic integration. But we recognize the limitations, one of which is the existence of this gap. And therefore, if we continue to take a gradual approach, make sure that all nations recognize where we are going, feel that they belong to this common program, then we will be able to generate the kind of unifying factor or common values that you ask about. But what's the most difficult challenge for me is that even this is not enough. At the moment, we're just letting leaders, governments, in their twice-a-year summit, decide upon agreements, decide upon future programs. But if we truly want to create a community, if we truly want to create common values, we have to make our peoples feel that they belong to this community, that they are an ASEAN citizen, that they are part of this community. We are still a long, long way from that. Not just even a sense of belonging, but even awareness of the existence of ASEAN as a regional grouping is something that I'm sure in many countries, and Thailand included, we feel that we still do not have enough of. And that's something that we need to work on. Because in the end, when we talk about issues like clean governance, often the obstacles to achieving that are the people who are in power. They're the ones that will be making the agreements and determining the direction of the region. But the only way we will make sure that they subject themselves to the wishes of the people, we have to make sure that the people have a voice, have a way of channeling their views, but most important, they too have to feel that they belong to this community and that they have a sense of duty that they have to participate in this community building process. I recognize very well Thailand began the idea of having leaders at the summit actually meet the civil society organizations in 10 countries. We ran into trouble with some of our friends in the region because their governments were not prepared to have that kind of forum. But in subsequent years, we are still trying to make sure that this gets on the agenda. We involve youth, we involve parliamentarians, and we should involve civil society in the building of this community. That's the only way to make sure that we can attain our objectives of having good common values that would support successful integration. Fighting populism. Well, if I knew the answer, I wouldn't be the opposition leader now. We tried. We recognize that once populist policies get implemented, people to a certain extent become spoiled. They expect that to continue. And what we try to do during my administration was to slowly adapt some of these programs. For instance, we began with handouts for the elderly, but we then, towards the end of the administration, were moving towards the setting up of a pension fund where people will also have to make contributions. A national savings fund, getting the informal sector to join Social Security, and slowly building up the idea that there is no free lunch, that they have to contribute, that the government would match the kind of savings and contributions into programs that will guarantee security for them in old age or in sickness and so on. As I said, obviously it was not enough. But we have to be determined and keep a clear head on this. I think the person who asked the question clearly is afraid that there will be just a race to the bottom, that everybody would just try to outbid each other in populist policies, and in the end the policies cannot be sustained, the economy will sooner or later collapse, and that could also put democracy at risk as well. So I think politicians, political parties have to be courageous enough to tell the truth to the public about the dangers of populism, why they cannot be sustained. But if not, they will have to learn the hard way. And that is something that we all wish to avoid. But in the end, the people will have their say. And if they feel that they want to continue to experiment with this, they will have to accept the consequences. So it's up to individual political parties and politicians which path they would take. For us, Democrat Party in Thailand, I mean, I've talked to the members of my party all the time about this, and we say we have to stick to what we feel is the right path. It will put us at a disadvantage when election time comes around, but we have to accept the consequences.
Thank you. Thank you.